The early 1990s WWF was a machine built on spectacle, and behind every Hulk Hogan poster and every Ultimate Warrior sprint to the ring, there was a quieter, stranger side of the business. Tag team wrestling was supposed to be the backbone of the roster, the place where storytelling could breathe over months instead of minutes. But for every Heart Foundation or Legion of Doom, there were teams built to lose, built to fill time, built to make someone else look good. Some of these duos never won a single meaningful match. Some were buried before they even had a chance to matter. And a few of the men trapped inside these gimmicks would go on to live lives far stranger than anything Vince McMahon ever scripted for them, including addiction, obscurity, and in some cases, an almost complete disappearance from public life. This is the story of the WWF's most forgettable tag teams, and the very real people who paid the price for being at the bottom of the card during wrestling's most colorful era. Start with the team that somehow made a career out of losing on purpose. The Bushwhackers, Luke Williams and Butch Miller, arrived in the WWF in 1988, already veterans of nearly 2 decades on the road together, most notably as the Vicious Sheepherders in New Zealand and the Territories, an act so violent it reportedly got them banned from entire promotions. But Vince McMahon didn't want violent, he wanted funny, so the Sheepherders were repackaged overnight into cartoonish, head-licking, boot-shuffling comedy wrestlers, and the transformation worked, at least commercially. Kids loved them, merchandise moved. But inside the ring, the Bushwhackers became something close to a punchline with a pulse, a team almost never booked to win a real match against anyone the company cared about. By the early 90s, they were essentially glorified enhancement talent in colorful boots, brought out to get a pop and then quietly beaten. It's a strange fate for two men who had once been considered dangerous enough to be feared. Miller passed away in 2020, and Williams continued occasionally appearing at conventions, a living relic of a gimmick that outlived its own purpose. Then there was a team built entirely around mystery, and not the good kind. The Conquistadors debuted in 1991. 2 masked wrestlers with matching gold and blue outfits and absolutely no defined personalities. The gimmick wasn't even really a gimmick. It was closer to an experiment in how little character a tag team could have and still get booked. The men under the masks rotated depending on who was available that night, which meant the Conquistadors weren't really 2 people at all. They were a costume. Various journeyman wrestlers cycled through the roles, and the team existed purely to lose to whoever the company needed to look strong that week. There was no manager cutting promos for them, no rivalry that meant anything, no title reign, nothing. They simply vanished from television by 1992, and most fans at the time couldn't have told you a single detail about who they were because there genuinely wasn't one to tell. The Beverly Brothers arrived with far more promise than they ever cashed in. Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos came into the WWF in 1991 as Blake and Bo Beverly, 2 arrogant, overdressed brothers managed by the genius, Lanny Poffo, whose ridiculous poetry actually gave the team more personality than most of their matches did. On paper, they had a real push. They feuded with the Bushwhackers and later the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, in matches that showcased legitimate in-ring talent. But the WWF never fully committed. Title shots came and went without payoff. By 1992, both men were gone from the company, Enos drifting through WCW and the independent circuit for years afterward, largely out of the mainstream spotlight. What made it sting more was that both men were genuinely gifted workers, trapped in a team that always felt one storyline away from meaning something and never got there. And then there was the team built almost entirely on stereotype, the Orient Express. Paul Diamond and Akio Sato, wrestling as Kato and Tanaka, were managed by Mr. Fuji starting in 1990, presented with an exaggerated, cartoonish Japanese gimmick that even by the standards of the era raised eyebrows. Their entire purpose on television was to feud with the Rockers, putting over Michaels and Jannetty's high-flying offense while rarely getting offense of their own. Diamond, ironically, wasn't even of Japanese descent, a detail the company simply glossed over because authenticity was never really the point. The team dissolved quietly by 1991. Its members shuffled into other roles or out of the company entirely. Another example of a gimmick built to serve someone else's spotlight rather than earn its own. What connects all 4 of these teams isn't just obscurity, it's what obscurity cost the men living inside it. Real careers, real bodies, years spent absorbing bumps for wrestlers destined for main event glory, while their own names faded into trivia questions. The early 90s WWF ran on spectacle, but underneath the neon and the pyrotechnics was a brutal hierarchy, and these 4 teams sat firmly at the bottom of it, remembered today not for what they accomplished, but for how completely the business was willing to let them disappear.